Everybody ready to go again? How'd you like the Know Your Rights?
Excellent.
Great, huh?
Excellent.
Along that line, we want to bring Amy Miller back up from the ACLU and have her speak a little more.
I actually wasn't planning on speaking since that video told you everything I would have said, but perhaps much more intelligently than I would have said. So instead, I think this is a time for you to ask questions, talk about situations you've had, ask any issues that might come up. While you're thinking about questions, I will tell you, it mentioned that in each state, it depends on whether or not you have to identify yourself. Nebraska is a state where we do have to identify ourselves if we're stopped by a cop. So again, to be clear, if you're driving, we've always got to have a driver's license with us. When you're walking down the street, though, the question is if a cop comes up and says, "Hey, what's your name?" In Nebraska, you have to say, "My name is Amy Miller." I don't have to have photo ID on me. It's still not yet that bad that we have to walk around with papers, unless you're an immigrant. People who are here on a visa do have to carry their documentation with them. But if you're a U.S. citizen, you don't have to be carrying ID on you, but we do have to verbally give our names. After that point in Nebraska and the other states are required, at that point then you can go silent. It's very odd that you have the right to remain silent after you've given them some information, but that's the only Nebraska-specific information to add to the video that we saw. So the question is, do you have any issues that you've seen that you wanted to ask about?
I have a question. It's about the probable cause and police dogs. Okay. Now, I've been pondering this scenario over forever. It's just something that I've always wondered. Okay. I know that a police dog is a police officer, and they have to have actual probable cause to search your vehicle, as long as you know your rights. So, if they say they smell something, is that actual probable cause?
Yes.
That's actual probable cause?
It is.
Well, then that bypassed the rest of my question.
Yeah, the bad news is on drug dogs,
Yeah.
they're incredibly unreliable. And the science has proven this again and again. They're unreliable on two different levels. From a physiological perspective, the dogs become unreliable because, not to put too fine a point on it, they're trained by sniffing drugs, and eventually the dogs, like anyone who on a regular basis is inhaling a hardcore drug, they become less reliable because the dogs become addicted. So from a physiological perspective, the dogs have a relatively short shelf life, and if you're an animal rights activist, you ought to be concerned about the use that the canines are being put to. And as you're standing there, you don't know whether you have a dog who's at the beginning or end of its career. But they're also unreliable from a psychological perspective. We all know that dogs love to please people. The dogs are like, did you want me to make that noise? Oh, okay. Woof? Yeah, whoa, yeah, I made my human happy. So both physiologically and psychologically, dry dogs are not very reliable. But there's a final problem. The dog supposedly will trigger on things that aren't drugs, but anything that's had contact with drugs, including currency. And as I'm sure most of you know, the average dollar bill that's in circulation in America would test positive for all different types of drugs. So the problem is, I just left a $2 tip for the waitress, and depending on which study that you believe in, it's very likely that that tip is going to get her in trouble if the drug dog comes and sniffs her pocket later. The Drug Administration, the Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA, admits that at least a third of bills in circulation are contaminated. So 1 out of 3 bills. Studies done by the ACLU and other organizations say it's 99% of bills in circulation are contaminated. So if a drug dog alerts, does that mean the drug dog is hallucinating because the drug dog's high? Does it mean that the drug dog is just trying to please its owner because the cop is trying to get the drug dog to say yes? Or is the drug dog smelling the dollars in your pocket? They're incredibly unreliable, but from the legal perspective, they still count as probable cause for them to search your car. It's very bad news. More regulation and requirement of training of drug dogs would be a good idea. In Nebraska right now, certification rules are very loosey-goosey. It's a big area that needs reform.
Can they use that same scenario to search a person?
Yes.
They can?
Yes.
So if a police officer, even without a drug, says, well, I smell marijuana, so I have the right to search you?
Well, they're always going to be able to do the pat-down if
Right.
they have reasonable suspicion, like they
Right.
think they smell something on us. If the drug dog indicates, now they've got probable cause to get to my
Right.
purse, get to my backpack, expensive.
Right, that's where my question was. Okay, if a regular police officer says that I smell drugs, does he have the right to search?
That does indicate probable cause. Same thing as if I roll down my window and
Yeah.
my eyes are bloodshot and I'm so like, hello, officer, what can I do for you?
Yeah.
I'm probably drunk and probably drunk driving. So
Right.
yeah, smell, the cops' visual cues, and sound.
But as we learned on the video, the cops are allowed to lie.
Yes,
I
they
mean, you're seeing a problem here, right?
Yes, one of the main reasons why, even if you're like, even if the cop gets up in your face and says, I don't care about your rights, get out of the car, I'm going to search the car right now, you should continue to say, I'm not consenting to the search. In perfect world, and what I usually do when I'm giving the trainings is, your hands are up in the air so the cop knows that you're not reaching for something. And you're shaking your head like you were in a silent movie from the old times. I'm not okay with this. Because there may be a cop dashboard cam that's capturing all this, and there's no way in court that they can argue that was me saying, yes, please search my car and tear my life apart. By making sure that you have made clear that you're not consenting, you're protecting yourself as much as you can. Now I usually have someone say, but how do I know whether there's a cop camera or not? In Nebraska, they're still not required. ACLU and other organizations have been lobbying for about 2 decades now to make it mandatory that every cop car be equipped with a cop dash cam. Got any clues about who comes up to the legislature every year and says, no, we don't need them? Cops. Cops are the ones who keep saying, we don't need cop dash cams. At this point, a lot of Nebraska law enforcement agencies have complied because it's good for cops too, right? If I get out of my car drunk and I take a swing at the cop, that's great evidence for when they go into court against me with assault on an officer. So a lot of agencies have voluntarily added cop dash cams, but you don't know when you're sitting there whether you're in front of a cop who has one or not. Assume it's there. I'm not consenting to this. Hands are in the air, there's no question about whether you're making a motion. Not just it's the words coming out of your mouth, but it's a clear, I'm not okay with this, I'm not consenting to this, are your best protections.
A bit of advice I could give is to get a little handheld recorder. It's the best way to protect yourself. You record it, you get everything there, it's in your, you have it, you own it. End of story. That's the best way to go about it.
Little dash cam.
And it's interesting because one of the things that we've been fighting for the last couple of years across the country is this emerging issue of people recording police. With a cell phone, we've got people who are riding motorcycles that load up the footage of them going real fast down the road. We've got people who are recording things with good old-fashioned video cameras when they were walking near a parade or whatnot. We have more and more issues where citizens are recording police. Cops don't like that. And we've seen people charged with anything from invasion of privacy to violating wiretap laws to filming without consent to cops just running over and tasing them and saying that that's suspicious. It's 100% clear we always have the right to record cops. And in the video you saw some guy on the street who just happened to record the police searching the one man. Apparently they weren't friends. It was just, hey, I'm seeing something that's going on, so I'm going to record that. You do have a right to do that. We had a number of people in Nebraska who, while filming cops or filming arrests of other people, got arrested themselves. And the law is you have the right to film, but we do have to stay out of the arrest. If Curtis is being arrested, I can't be right up here hoping for the glory close-up that's going to make me a YouTube star, because I'm interfering with an arrest. I have to move back a reasonable amount. And if cops say farther, I need to keep moving back. But if the cops say, lady, get out of here, you don't have a right to film this, well, no. Now keep moving back, baby steps, keep moving, but don't retreat. We have the right to record what's going on in our own case or in someone else's case, we just don't have the right to interfere with an arrest. One of the successes we had in the last year, woohoo, the Nebraska Police Academy trainings finally said they're going to include, for all new cops coming in, part of the curriculum will be a chapter on you have the right, people have the right to film police. So that every new cop coming through the training academy will now realize whether you're talking about a cell phone or a camera or video, audio recorder, they have to back down and allow us to do that. While we continue to talk, I brought a sign-up sheet if you want to get our emails about these issues that we're working on, cop dash cams, cop misconduct, all of those. Feel free to sign up. We do the occasional email about once a month or so. No requirement to do so. You can always visit our website. We have information about Know Your Rights with Cops. I left with John our newest brochure, Knowing Your Rights with Police. It also includes Know Your Rights with FBI and Know Your Rights with Immigration. I've got those in English and Spanish. Even a non-border state like Nebraska has got an increasing number of people being hassled because ICE and immigration thinks that they may be illegal. Yeah.
What about Know Your Rights with the DEA?
Should be the same rules.
Oh, okay.
Should be the same rules.
It's a
That's the
federal-
FBI?
It's a federal officer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
Any other questions about knowing your rights during a traffic stop or while you're walking down the street with cops?
What about when they come to your door and it's kind of,
That's your strongest point. Your weakest time is when you're in the car, because basically the Supreme Court has said that's a great big old glass box just rolling down the street, and we're really worried that people have drugs in cars. Your number one strongest place is when you are in your home. Because whether it is a mobile home, whether it is an apartment, whether it's a house, whether it's a castle, the Fourth Amendment is the strongest there. And their advice was the best. Step outside onto the porch and close the door behind you. Because if Curtis cracks open the door, and I'm just talking to him about, hey, we had some noise complaints. What is that sitting on your living room table? It's in plain sight. I don't need a warrant because I can see that there's something that is illegal sitting on his living room table. I'll let you decide what it was that was on your living room table. So keeping them out of your house is the strongest defense you have. They can't come in without a warrant or without consent unless it's an emergency, right? If they hear someone shouting, help, they could bust in right away. The consent that you have to worry about is anyone can give consent. So your 9-year-old, your brother-in-law who's crashing on your couch for the weekend, your clueless babysitter, anyone who answers the door, from the cop's perspective, is the person in control of the house. And so that person has the right to say, yes, you can come in. And you need to make sure that if you have house guests, if you've got kids, that everybody knows what your house rules are. You can talk to the police, don't allow anyone into the house. Yeah.
Can't you make a prior legal notification? Can't you place signs in your yard that plainly says you and not at any given moment are allowed on these grounds at any given time unless properly warranted?
You can certainly do that, and that's going to be a good first line. But then if I say to you, yeah, but today is Tuesday, how do you feel? You could say, yeah, you're okay. Come on in, cop, today.
Well,
So the cop could still ask you,
Yeah.
and that means the cop could ask the woman who answers the front door, or your brother-in-law who answered the front door. And so they could still ask.
What if I clarify even further? Not one specific person of any sort can give permission to beyond that. Because legally I have rights over my land and what I own. So what I say should go, correct?
Right, and the problem is they still can ask you.
Well, I mean let's say just intelligently knowing that I'm not going to advise the police in any way, shape, or form to enter my house or my premises.
And here's the problem. They know that, they saw the sign, they rang the doorbell just to see if you changed your mind or if they could win you over, and it's your little kid who answers the door, and you're not there, or you're upstairs in the shower. The problem is when they say, well, hi there, buddy. How's it going today? Say, could we come in and wait for your daddy? And he says, yes. Consent has been given, according to the courts, by children as young as 5. And
So
they've said, looks good to us. So you need to make sure that everybody in the house knows your rules. Because this posted
So
sign
don't
is
have
not
kids.
That's what I got.
That's what I got from you.
From a world population explosion issue as well, perhaps.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah.
Saving the world.
whatever my kid is.
Another hypothetical. So let's just say your neighbor calls the police and says, I think that my neighbor is smoking marijuana or whatever. Would that give the police probable cause, or would the police, when they get there, if they come out, would they have to smell it themselves or visibly see it?
They've got to smell it themselves or see it.
See it. Okay.
The only time when a neighbor is going to override that is if the neighbor says, I heard his girlfriend, child, elderly grandparents screaming, help, help, he's got a knife, right?
Right.
Again, they're going to be able to override if there's a safety issue and it's secondhand. But secondhand, oh yeah, I so totally believe he's doing something illegal in the house, is not good
It's
enough.
not going to be admissible.
Right.
Okay.
It's probably going to be enough for them to take that information to a judge and maybe get a warrant.
Right.
But them coming and saying your neighbor said this is not enough for them to walk into your house.
Okay. And well, in the state of Nebraska, since it has been decriminalized. More than likely yes, but would they go? You think that they would go to the trouble for that?
Well, they're always on a fishing expedition.
Yeah.
If they get a call saying I smell marijuana, that's a little fish.
Right.
Like when I'm hanging out in the cop locker room, like, so who'd you catch? I gave a ticket for an infraction use of marijuana. Doesn't get me anything. But maybe while I'm in your room, I get to see the illegal sawed-off shotgun, or I get to see a pile of child porn, or I get to see the giant bag of heroin. So they're always hoping that if they get their foot in the door on a little thing, that it's going to turn into something that's a big notch on their belt.
Okay.
That's why they waste their time on marijuana, because they're constantly hoping it's going to lead to something bigger.
Else.
I will also then digress for 1 minute about the fact that Nebraska prisons are overcrowded by people who, because they took the time to investigate marijuana, that we ended up with a situation where most of Nebraska prisons now are over 2 times capacity for what they're supposed to have. They've jammed so many prisoners into the facilities, they've got people double and triple bunked in rooms that were built to hold 1 man or 1 woman. And this has led to a human rights crisis where you've got more kids in foster care, more people who are without a breadwinner in the family. The decriminalization of marijuana and other drugs obviously is going to be the economic benefit to everybody, and the over-incarceration problem is a whole other ball of wax, which I gather we'll have run out of time for today's thing. But, again, that's one of the issues. ACLU works on these issues at 3 levels. We file lawsuits and we have to. We go to the legislature and say, we need cop dash cams. And then we do public education. We print brochures like the ones that are out on the table that tell you what your rights are with police. So if you've got a poor memory and you can't remember the 10 rules, they're there and you can stick it in your back pocket or your glove box. John has also made one special for Nebraska that is perfectly on point as well, so you can use either of those. But by doing this, and the information that we'll send you about the various issues coming up in Nebraska, if you've got a problem or a question, feel free to email us. You'll get a courtesy email saying thank you for signing up. You could always use the resources that are on our website. You can contact us if you have a problem. Since, like NORML, we're a small nonprofit, we can't sue on every case we get. But sometimes it'll be, I heard from one photographer that they got hassled by cops. Then I heard from another photographer that he got tased while he was watching the police. Then I heard from another guy that the cops came to his house or to his work after he was seen photographing police 2 or 3 days earlier. And after a while I start to realize, maybe this is a mega issue that we need to work at. So sometimes, in the same way as filing complaints against bad cops, it feels like you might not get an immediate response on your case, but there can be a cumulative effect. So feel free to use us, and we're there as a free resource. And if we can't help you, we'll try to say, we can't help, but we might be able to do this at a macro level by telling your story to the legislature, and here's another resource for you. Meanwhile, since the ACLU believes that marijuana ought to be legal, we're ready to help NORML in whatever way we can. We wish you good luck on your petition circulation work. So let us know how we can continue to partner with you.
All right, cool. Thanks.
Thanks, Amy. I guess the police are kind of like vampires. Nobody give them permission to come in the house. And if you're threatening your wife, do it with a wooden stake. So they'll be afraid to come in. Seriously, don't let them in the house.